Hey everybody, welcome to Behind the Scenes, an Out of Frame podcast. I am your host, Sean Malone, the creator of Out of Frame and creative director for the Foundation for Economic Education. And with me, as always, is our senior writer, Jennifer Maffasanti, and our editor for Out of Frame Shorts, Paul Nelson. Welcome to the show, guys. How have you been?
Good.
Busy. It's been very busy.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we just released, you'll be seeing this next
you'll
week
be seeing
after,
this
but we just
a little bit.
released a out-of-frame short video detailing Disney's hypocrisy with Mulan.
Yeah.
Oof.
So two things about that. First of all, we should be better at not scheduling podcast recordings on out of frame release days. It's never a great idea.
No, it's not.
Yeah.
But man, we made it and we got it done.
We made it.
So
Just.
here we are. But yeah, the Mulan controversy is pretty interesting. This was not really planned for what we were going to talk about today. And, you know, obviously you should check out the episode that we've got on the YouTube channel. But man, it's kind of shocking.
It is. And kind of just being in that world, in that mindset the last few days editing this video.
Blood boiling.
Mm-hmm. Yes, it's the whole situation and how Disney has handled just the utter, just complete disregard for what anybody would think is right, just because they want to reach the Chinese market and get that Chinese cash.
Well, this is something we could talk. So normally, right now, we be talking about what we've been watching or what we're planning to watch and all that kind of stuff, and we can get to that. Although I don't, I think honestly, like between Jen working on the script and then me working on the script and recording it and then Paul doing all of the editing for it, like apart from the movies that we're actually going to talk about on this episode, like that's been a pretty big part of what we've been doing this week.
Yes, just really depressing research.
Yeah, and I mean, so the main controversy, for those who haven't seen the episode but really do go to YouTube and check it out, is that in the credits of Mulan, Disney thanked 8 different, different agencies of the Chinese government, several of which are propaganda ministries, and a couple are security agencies that are overseeing the imprisonment camps.
Genocide.
Literally a genocide.
Yep.
Jen, as Jen described it, I think originally was like a slow-moving ethnic cleansing, which is kind of the right way to say it, because it's not like the kind of, when you think of genocide, you think of like Rwanda or something.
Holocaust.
Holocaust, where people are like, chasing people down with guns and murdering them in the street. And this is not so much that as it is work camps and rounding, this ethnic group up and putting them into labor camps, basically, and either working them to death or, forcing sterilization and things like that so that they won't, be able to exist in a generation, essentially.
Right. Basically.
Which is why it meets the UN's definition of genocide. Forced sterilization of an ethnic group is a pretty good way to eliminate that ethnic group over time.
That'll do it.
Yeah, and that's exactly what China's doing, and here we have Disney making a movie in China, theoretically about Chinese culture, although they screwed that up too, which is kind of
Disney.
Hilarious.
Yeah.
And
you can't get out of their own way.
Well, they made it, it's so much worse than the original Mulan too, because like the original Mulan did not rely on a lot of this sort of mysticism that they're kind of pulling on for this movie. Yes, there's a talking cricket and a dragon and stuff, but like that's a fun Disney movie, animated movie.
I mean, that's
deal.
Squarely in
You
Disney princess movie bailiwick.
Yeah, but like the character of Mulan is a human being who has human limitations. She's not just magically gifted at being a swordsman, whatever, all that kind of stuff, which seems to be how the new movie has gone. So Chinese people.
Conspiracy theory.
Yeah.
That kind of clicked in my head right now, but I wonder if the reason why they went towards Mulan has Jedi powers, the midichlorian. Wait, no, Chi. Sorry.
Chi.
Is and not personal individual
work
and work ethic.
Yeah.
Is that wouldn't have made it past the Chinese censors.
I could see that. I mean, I think, maybe that's a way to get it to go past Chinese censors, although I'm not entirely sure because they're kind of weird about magic stuff
That is true.
also.
Yeah.
But you call it qi, and suddenly it's like a Chinese cultural thing, and maybe it's a little bit different. But at the same time, I think that it's so. When we wrote the episode and recorded the episode, there had been no box office information at all, and still there's not really, because I don't really know what Disney Plus
We're never going to get
numbers are, and I don't think
No.
we'll ever get that really. But we do know what actual box office numbers from China are, and they're not very good. So it doesn't seem like, even though whatever they did made it past Chinese censors, at least, Chinese people aren't particularly interested in the movie. Which is kind of funny, because it's like
That was the
worst of
whole
all
point.
worlds.
Yeah.
They end up praising agencies responsible for genocide, making a movie that like is entirely like driven by government censors, and then still the people that they're trying to reach don't buy it.
It's almost like government doesn't know their own people well enough. We haven't heard that. We haven't seen that before.
That's such a novel idea,
That is a
Paul.
strange concept.
You should write a book about it.
Yeah,
Yes.
I don't know. It's such a weird choice, and it put us in a weird position, I think, in some ways, because I'm pretty equal opportunity critic, and I don't have any problems criticizing Disney, but also like it's never fun to because I spend a lot of time on the channel like talking about the positive effects of commercial relationships and business and trade and all of those kinds of things, and I do genuinely believe that if you take the government part of it out of the equation, which you can't do for a lot of reasons, but if you do, you'll see interpersonal trade between Americans and Chinese people as overwhelmingly a good thing.
Yeah.
But the problem is, of course, China's government has increasingly placed more and more and more of these kinds of restrictions. Like, there's a weird curve where, like, in the 90s, like really in the 80s, 90s, and like very early 2000s, just feels to me like China is getting more free and more liberalized, and the government is playing less and less of a role in decisions being made, not only in terms of commerce, but also speech and those kinds of things. And it's opening up a little bit. And then, for whatever reason, in like the 2010s, and now it just started declining. And now here we are with, Hong Kong, issues in Hong Kong, issues in Taiwan, issues with the Uyghurs in Xinjiang. Like, it just terrible. And I don't know what to say anymore, other than now coming back to the commercial side of it is like, this is one area where I think businesses should be a little bit more, Disney especially. I mean, look, it's one thing if you have to, like I said in the episode, again, watch the episode, but, it's one thing if you have to, play the game a little bit to work with a country.
Yeah, you have to play the game in Maryland.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So like,
Georgia,
I mean,
California, whatever. That is all pretty normal, But if the game is defending or ignoring a genocide, it's not a game you should play.
I think this is my biggest issue is the hypocrisy that's displayed by Disney, but also you see this in the NBA and also all of Activision with
Blizzard.
They say one thing about issues in our country in America, and then literally what they're saying is going to happen because Donald Trump's doing something is happening in China for real, and it's fine.
It's fine.
Yeah.
We'll go film there anyways. Oh, we can't say anything about that because we don't know enough. But it's that I think that's what really gets me is these American companies that have played a huge role in making what our culture is are now saying we don't care about our culture or American values. We just care about the money and the Chinese market. It'd be one thing if it was like, they're opening up, but they're not. They are forcing people to have sterilizations because they don't like their religion.
And I think it's another thing too. I think different kinds of industries are different, or different ways of. So like me as a buyer, for example, wanting to go buy something from a Chinese entrepreneur who has a shop on Etsy or something like that, right? Or eBay, through eBay or whatever. Like, I don't feel like there's any moral problem there, because I am engaging as directly as possible with one other individual on the other side of the world. Now, I don't know what that individual believes. Maybe they support the state, maybe they don't, whatever. But the reality is, I'm not as a condition of engaging in the transaction. There's no condition on me to support, one of these agencies or something.
Yeah.
There's clearly a condition on Disney to be able to be there and to be able to film, to have to actually support and thank these agencies. That for me is just an inherent deal breaker. It's like, well, look, I want to film here. I want to showcase China and China's landscapes and their history and all this in as authentic a way as possible. As a filmmaker, I would love to do that. That's great. But if the cost of that is that I have to say, hey, good job, propaganda ministry, no, I'm out.
Yep.
I'm out at that point. So, yeah, it's kind of insane. And you're right. The hypocrisy is just deafening in these situations.
I'm too angry to form coherent sentences about this whole thing. I've had my head in it for over a week now.
When you wrote a companion piece too, right? Or are you gonna?
I have not.
You still planning on it?
Not really.
Okay. It's pretty grim.
It's very grim, and it's just, I don't know how anyone looks at this situation and is like, not even as far as, yeah, I'm okay with this, but I'm not going to say anything about this. Like, it's just going to be like, that's not something that we're going to talk about. We're not going to acknowledge.
I think my hope is, and this is kind of what I said at the end of the Out of Frame episode. I'm not going to tell people not to watch the movie. I mean, there's a lot of reasons, and I probably will eventually. Well, I don't know. On this, I might not actually ever see this movie because I have no.
I already have a long-standing disdain for Disney remakes, live-action remakes.
I was going to say, I tend to see almost everything eventually. I'm not going to pay $30 for it. I'm not going to pay any additional money anywhere for it. Although in this case, I may never actually see it because I can't see a world in which I would voluntarily go out of my way to choose it for that reason.
I had an interesting feeling when this movie was first announced. Because like I just said, the live action remakes for Disney cartoons, I hate the idea. I hate everything about it. But when the Mulan remake was announced, I was like, oh, this could be interesting if they stick to the story.
Yeah.
If it's about a woman standing up to an oppressive regime.
Yeah.
And it's Chinese. Okay. Mm-hmm. Like, I'm here for this.
Yeah. And then just fell on their faces.
Yeah. I mean, I think that, and we didn't even talk about that, but that may be the most sort of devastatingly ironic part of the whole thing, is that this movie would give you a perfect opportunity to tell an allegory about modern China in a realistic way, right? You can use an ancient story to sort of slip in this idea of like, hey, maybe individuals should stand up against the oppressive society that they live in and whatnot. But of course, you can never show that in China. So, I mean, you can't really show Ghostbusters in China. So, whatever. But, I don't know. It's bonkers. I don't know why we're not taking those opportunities when they exist. And it's just worse because it's like, okay, it's one thing not to take that opportunity and to just tell a traditional folklore story, whatever, but to actively praise the alternative, it's like, and you didn't have to do that,
And even though relatively few people know about the situation with the Uyghurs in China, it isn't as though there hasn't been reporting on it.
No.
There's been reporting on it for
several years. Several years.
If you wanted to know about this, you could have found out. And the fact that I cannot believe that would have never come up in their research for filming locations.
I mean, it's not even possible.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Yes.
It's not even possible for them not to have been. I mean, it's possible. It's what I said. It's possible for some crew members to not have been aware.
Yeah. There's no way Disney
But I don't
or the
think,
director
I don't
didn't
think
know.
writers, producers, directors, Disney's executives, not a chance.
No.
Yeah. But I think the only real saving grace of this, and then I want to get to like this week's actual topic here, is I think that they're feeling it financially already, and I do think, and I don't know if it's entirely because the product is not enticing just on its own merit, and people just don't like that. I mean, I think there are other. We could probably do a whole other show on what's I'm assuming is probably wrong with Mulan, but then I would have to watch Mulan, and I don't really want to at this point, so let's not. But so I don't know if it's just because like people don't like the movie or people are reacting to this kind of thing about it, but I do think that eventually Disney needs to kind of take the hit for stuff like this. And if Chinese people aren't watching it, Americans certainly don't seem to be watching it. I don't know.
What are you good for?
And then I'll talk about it. We'll talk about it. And maybe the listeners out there can talk about it with their friends as well and just make sure people know that Disney has done this. And more importantly, because Disney's hypocrisy is obnoxious, but what China is doing is horrific. So, if you want to put your attention on one thing,
maybe that's the
put it
bright
on
side of
China.
this is that I think this is the first time the situation with the Uyghurs is hitting
a really broad audience.
Yeah.
And a younger audience, hopefully. Yeah.
For sure.
All right. So, shifting gears pretty dramatically here.
Oh, yes.
I want to talk about something fun because this week we're talking about Bill and Ted Face the Music. A couple weeks ago, I think it was on our Patreon bonus section, we talked about Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. We originally were going to do this episode actually a couple weeks ago, but then Chadwick Boseman died, and we wanted to kind of switch it up and talk about his career and do all that kind of stuff. So, by the way, check out that episode if you haven't listened to it. But Bill and Ted's, I almost said Bogus Journey, but Face the Music, Bill and Ted Face the Music, is brand new film. Once again, new movies finally sort of coming out.
Out on VOD.
But honestly, not bad. I mean, I think this was a perfectly good movie to release on VOD.
Yeah.
It was a good one to like have at home, and there's nothing about it that you really need to see in a theater.
No.
So
Yeah, I agree.
I think it was fine. But yeah, so I don't know, Jen, you wanna walk us through the plot of Bill and Ted
Sure.
Face the Music?
So this is 30 years after the original Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure. Bill and Ted have been rock stars, but now they don't have it. They're not popular.
Has-beens.
They're has-beens. And they've just really settled down into married life with the princesses and raising their daughters, Billy and Thea.
Yeah, we got to talk about them. They're my
Yes.
favorite part of this movie, mostly, I think.
Yes, absolutely.
But
And yeah, they're just banging their heads against the wall trying to write and record the song that will unite the world because they still haven't done it.
yeah,
And then
and they are trying.
They are trying.
They are actively trying.
With throats with singing.
The throat
They've
singing,
gone through every
you
other
know,
alternative
Yep.
at this point.
They're in struggle forest is what it is. They're deep in the forest.
Yeah.
So they're trying. It just keeps missing the mark,
Yeah.
and they're getting really frustrated, and they don't really know what to do with themselves. And then they get a message from the future, as one does. It's from Rufus's daughter Kelly.
Fun fact, by the way. So Rufus in the original, played by George Carlin.
Yes.
Carlin's actual daughter named Kelly.
Oh,
So
I didn't know that.
I'm sure that was not coincidental.
No.
That
Probably not.
Kristen Shaw's character, who plays the daughter of Rufus, is also named Kelly, which I thought was kind of sweet.
Yes, that is very sweet. So she comes to the past to collect Bill and Ted and take them to go see the great leader and the council there because they're in trouble because they have not
They've-
yet made this song.
And they have 74 minutes to do it.
And they have 74 minutes to do it. Now, we should maybe pause here and say time travel in Bill and Ted has literally never made any sense of any kind.
And I'm fine with it.
And it does not make any more sense here.
Nope.
In spite of being in a world where they have time machines and could go anywhere at any time in history that they would like to go, somehow this movie still manages to give them a countdown clock on the amount of time
And
they've got
I
left.
appreciated it. That that whole entire clock was just like, oh, there's 20 minutes left in this movie.
Yeah,
Got it.
that's
Yeah.
that's
I'm
pretty
fine with
much
that.
how it worked. It was the exact length of the movie.
Now, they do try to deal with it a little bit because they are like, well, what if we just go back in time to when we... So this is like really the rest of the plot for Bill and Ted anyway, is them going back in time, going to different periods of time, and then eventually going into the future to try to find that moment in time where they did actually successfully write the song. So that they can bring it back to the moment in time that they actually need to write it. Now, again, I'm not even going to waste any energy trying to explain away the many, many paradoxes that all of this creates.
Yes.
Well, this is time travel. Nobody knows how it works.
Yes, right.
Like it could be Bill and Ted.
Well, Bill and Ted is stretching it, but yes. Anyway, they try to deal with it, but there's, through some, techno babble, whatever, they instruct us that no, in fact, they only have 74 minutes of Bill and Ted of Bill and Ted A time. Bill and Ted 1, Bill and Ted Prime. Bill and Ted Prime.
Yeah.
There are a lot of other Bill and Teds in this movie too.
There
so
really are.
you got to deal with old Bill and Ted. You got to deal with prison Bill and Ted.
Breaking into Dave Grohl's house.
Breaking into
Bill
Dave
and
Grohl's
Ted.
house. Bill and Ted. Just
Sad drunk. Bill and
junkies,
Ted.
drunks.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's funny.
Rock bottom Bill and Ted.
Yeah.
That's the. Yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, plot-wise, there's not much else to say. They go to different periods of their own time to try to figure out how they can bring together this song. They do. Meanwhile, their wives, the princesses, go on their own little time travel adventure that we never really get to see.
Nope.
They just pop in and out little bits.
And the daughters.
And then the daughters go on a time travel
Yes.
adventure of their own.
Collecting musicians.
Yes.
Famous musicians throughout time.
So they collect Jimi Hendrix, they collect Louis Armstrong, who else? Mozart. Who else do they bring in?
Flautist.
A flautist.
Oh yeah, a Chinese flute player, like a bamboo flute player, and then a rapper. Who is it?
Kid Cudi.
Oh, Kid Cudi. They bring in.
Should have been Kanye.
Actually, really should have been Kanye. That would have been funny.
That would have been great.
The problem I have, but this is, again, it's a Bill and Ted movie, so how much of a problem can I really have, is...
and a drummer from the Stone Age.
Oh, yeah, and a caveman drummer. Cavewoman drummer. It would be the worst band that's ever been put together.
It doesn't make a lot of sense.
In the
Nothing
history of the world.
makes sense in this movie. Like,
They-
this is not actually going to work.
There
But
are
it's fun and games. So.
Musicians... So, music is a language, fundamentally. I mean, it's written down. You can communicate with it. Like, you can, communicate with each other. But there's a lot of idiomatic aspects to it that are very specific to certain cultures. And if you don't have that language, like if you're, Louis Armstrong at least would know a lot of what, Mozart was doing, but Mozart would have no idea what Louis was doing, no idea what Jimi Hendrix was doing. The cave woman did just nothing there. There's nothing there at all. And then, bringing in somebody from another part of the world's musical tradition, like that's just not going to, I don't know. It's just, that was like one of the weirder parts to me, because then the whole end of, like big spoiler here, there's a concert at the end of the movie. Right? Big concert. But then I'm just like, oh, this would just be the worst.
Yeah.
Be just the absolute worst band that's ever been put together on.
In fairness,
kind of was.
in the beginning, it
wasn't
was.
that good. Yeah.
It was just awful.
They did get it together, but mostly because Bill and Ted's daughters, who are just Bill and Ted, Thea and Billy, Um, although, were they named? Were they the reverses?
Yes.
They named them after. Yeah,
Yes.
after their friends. Right. So
So Bill's daughter is Thea.
Right.
And
Ted's daughter
is Billy.
Yeah. Mostly they sampled
Yep.
music, and that was kind of, and they set that up well. Like they were, always in the background of this movie, like making little recordings and talking about music and pulling snippets and samples from different tracks and stuff. So I think their characters are set up really well. The actresses who played both of those characters are, I think, mostly from TV. The Billy was from, I've really only seen her in Atypical before, which is a pretty good show. And I liked her in Atypical quite a bit, but this is kind of the first time I've seen her in a movie. I loved her to death because she's just doing a Keanu impression.
Yeah.
And it's hilarious. To
She
me,
nails it.
nails a
She is great.
like 1990s Keanu. Just, oh, dude.
Wow.
Whoa.
And even the hair.
And the hands and like the gestures and just the body stiffness of like Keanu in that era. And it's just like, oh man, so great. And I thought
Really
she was
is.
fantastic. I thought Alex Winter was really, really good in this too, which is funny because he hasn't done anything but direct in decades, like 2 decades, pretty much.
I thought the weak link was Keanu.
I actually agree.
Surprisingly.
I was
Yeah.
surprised by that too, but he seemed tired to me. Seemed kind of old,
I'm here to get this check.
which I think is funny because I don't know why you would do this movie. Like Keanu has no reason to do this movie for a check.
yeah.
He's got much bigger checks for much bigger movies. I don't know.
Maybe. I don't
Maybe.
know. This.
I don't
It was
know.
Like
kinda
he's
surprising.
literally about to start filming the next 2 John
Yeah.
Wicks. Like
Yeah, they're going into John Wick 4 and 5 like right now.
he did not need to do this movie.
So I think the charitable version for me is just that he's actually just super overworked and just kind of, all right, I'm being too mean maybe, but phoning in a little bit because,
Yeah.
it's Bill and Ted, and it's not.
You can get away with it.
It's not like spending 9 years at the range trying to work your way around John Wick action beats, action choreography and stuff. But I don't know. I agree. I think Keanu was kind of the weak link in this movie. But I don't know. Did you guys think it was funny? I mean, did you think?
there were times when I was genuinely amused. I definitely caught some feelings at the end.
Yeah. There's a lot. I think if you're a parent, probably.
Yeah.
There's a lot more in this movie because a lot of this, the actual theme of the movie is really about sort of, I don't want to say letting go of your own dreams, but it's like passing
Passing the torch.
the torch to your kids a little bit.
Yeah, you're not in the spotlight anymore, and that's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's a good thing.
Yeah. And I like that about the movie too. And I thought the kids were great. So I actually really enjoyed that part of it. I don't know if that's going to mean spin-offs or sequels or whatever. I don't know why you would.
The story's done.
I think the story's done.
I think the story is done.
They have saved. They've
saved the world.
There's no more. There's not going to be any more turmoil.
Yeah.
Like everyone loves each other now throughout all of history. So we're good.
Yeah, they did actually
we did it.
merge
we
history.
fixed everything.
Fixed everything. Okay, so that is one thing I actually really do like about this movie. And I was saying this before we started recording. In a time period where we've been in lockdown and like everything else has been kind of miserable for months and months and months. And it's the same kind of thing I said about Palm Springs a little bit. It's just nice to have a funny movie that's just
Little brainless.
It's just
Lighthearted.
Lighthearted. It's not trying to make a grand political point about the world or try to tell you.
Just be excellent to each other.
Just be excellent to each other and
party on.
party on. Which is, it's like a weird, innocent throwback. And you're like, it's a throwback to like 1992, which I guess is a long time ago now, but it's weird that that's a long time ago to me. But it's like, I wouldn't mind more movies right now that were just be excellent to each other.
Yeah.
And like, we're not going to make a whole thing about like whatever, like racial politics are going on or identity politics, or we're not going to get into like, some allegory about how Donald Trump is evil and how, like it's just an endless stream of just really aggressive like political messaging in most of the content that I see today.
Yeah.
And it's kind of nice to check out of that for, hour and a half.
To just be entertained.
To just be entertained. Yeah.
I also did really like the idea of music of art in general, just bringing peace and harmony to the world.
Yeah.
I loved that part of this movie.
I also like, so we didn't talk about Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, which is a very weird movie.
Yeah.
And I'd kind of forgotten about it, but like we didn't want to talk about it the last episode. Like it wasn't our focus. But like in Bill and Ted's Bogus Journey, they meet death. Like the movie's actually way less about time travel, and it's way more about like life and death and sort of existentialism. And it becomes like a parody of The Seventh Seal, which is kind of a hilarious thing for a stupid comedy to do. But here we are. And, playing chess with death on the beach, except for in this case, it's like, talking to death about his bass guitar solos, whatever. But William Sadler, who plays Death in Bogus Journey, comes back and reprises his role here. And and it's kind of great because like in this 25-year span where, they ended Bogus Journey with the big concert with Death on the stage and the whole thing, they've broken up and they've had a falling out. And so they don't get along with Death anymore.
Death has been demoted.
Death has been demoted. He's been booted out of the band. And they like get back together with him, and it's nice. And he talk about Death's bass album. It's like it's ahead of its time.
They just weren't ready for it.
Just weren't ready for it, man. But it's just a little bit of a good send up of like rock and roll and things like that. But it's just nice. It's just nice to see that to me. And I agree. I didn't think it was the funniest movie. It's not the funniest movie I've seen this year by any stretch.
No.
But I like that it exists, and I like that they made it. And I like seeing Alex Winter again, too. I'd like to see him act more, because he's pretty good.
I haven't seen him in anything else besides just
But that's because that's all he's been doing is directing for years and years and years. I don't know. That I thought was kind of cool, too, because somebody who's been out of that game for as long as he has to come back and really not only nail the character, but also to bring some pathos to it. Like, there's a lot of, I think Bill is the more empathetic of the two. He's the more emotive of the two, and brings in, there's just more there for him to do. And I don't know if that was the writing or just Alex, but I don't know. I thought that was pretty good.
Yeah.
Well, all right.
I agree.
Bill and Ted, Face the Music. It's on. Well, just VOD.
Yeah,
Yes,
VOD.
Buy it wherever you want.
Have you seen any numbers? Have they released anything?
I haven't seen any numbers. We could look that up real quick, though.
My guess nowadays, if they aren't great, they're not releasing them.
I think that's true now too, and I think it's a thing I actually don't like about the new world that we live in, because as a filmmaker, it actually makes it a lot harder to sort of judge like what's popular, what's not popular, and what's like if you're thinking about it as like a producer and you want to see like, okay, well, what movies should I invest my effort into? It's really hard to do that. And if it's all just like Netflix clandestinely telling you this is the top 5 or this is in the whatever, you're like, well,
3 million watched 20 seconds of this, so
3 million people watched 20 seconds of this, therefore it's a hit. No, it's really weird, and that is a big difference between streaming and theaters. Like a theatrical release, if you get a ticket sale, you're apart from the random and very rare walkout, right? Like if you have people walking out of the movie, that's pretty uncommon and it's really, really bad. But otherwise, you're pretty much guaranteed that a ticket sale is a full complete watch, beginning to end, or beginning to, credits at least. And now, even with what Marvel's done, I think even sitting through the credits is pretty normal for people, at least for a lot of things. Trying to look at box office numbers here. Again, box office is kind of a weird, meaningless thing. It's just the box office numbers are so low right now too. Like,
Yeah, what does doing well even mean right now? Like, it's
Well, so Bill and Ted Face the Music is actually in some theaters, so that's cool. I still don't see actual numbers here though.
Who has made the choice to get in their car and go to a physical theater to watch?
So this is the thing. Like I'm looking at Unhinged, which I saw, got a $4 million weekend.
This is like its 5th or 6th weekend.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm looking at something from a week or two ago or whatever. But New Mutants opened in almost 2,500 theaters and was estimated. This is when they released this, and they were tracking at between $7 and $10 million, which is just brutal.
Yeah,
I think
so brutal.
I think Tenet did 20.
Yeah, I mean Tenet, which is like the most popular thing right now, is not from an actual box office standpoint is.
But you could if you squinted your eyes and like you could make an argument that for Tenet that it didn't do that bad.
Yeah,
because you don't have New York, Los Angeles. You don't have these huge markets that people go see movies.
I know.
And then also the places that are showing it, you can only fill the place up 40%.
Yeah.
And they also don't have as many showings. And so if you look like break it down, the numbers all the way down to that, maybe you can get that it was a success, but.
Well, yeah, I
really
mean, the definition of success has to just radically change right now. I mean, like you're $200 million. And I do wonder, too, so, again, other movies are being delayed still. Like, been trying to work on a Wonder Woman episode for Out of Frame. And, of course, the original plan was that Wonder Woman would be coming out, at the end of October.
Beginning of October.
Or beginning of October. You're right, beginning of October. Well, actually, yeah, what's happening at the end of October is, or maybe the very beginning of November, is the Black Widow movie. And I half expect, just like Wonder Woman got pushed to Christmas, who knows if we get to, mid-October and Black Widow gets pushed again. And these things just keep getting pushed back and back and back. And it just reminds you that, so there's an idea, I think Bob Higgs is the first person I remember really talking about it, although I don't know if if this terminology predates Robert Higgs, but is the idea of regime uncertainty. And in economics and sort of political philosophy, the idea of regime uncertainty is this idea that, if your property rights are not stable, or if your legal rules are not stable, if you can't have reasonable expectations that the future will be operating under basically the same set of rules as today, what tends to happen is people just stop making plans.
Yep.
Yeah.
Because what are you going to do, right? Like you're not going to invest $10 million in some business that the state will just take from you, 5 years from now or whatever.
Or close.
Well,
you can't operate for 6 months at least.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, and you see this. So even I say like a $10 million investment, but it's also something as simple as would you start a farm? Would you start raising crops if by the time you were going to harvest those crops, a warlord would just roll in and take all of them? You know what I mean? It's stuff like that. You just stop making plans. And so you end up trying to really just focus inward and try to make whatever you can for yourself, and you don't really invest in anything that has any long time horizon. And I'm feeling that way with movies right now. And I'm feeling that way with Out of Frame a little bit right now too, where I want to make plans for this is the episode that I'm going to do next month, and then the rug just gets pulled out, and it's just okay,
right?
Yeah.
Well, can't do that.
I don't think movies are it's going to be drastically different.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure there's going to be fewer of them.
They're going to be much smaller budgets.
Well,
maybe.
I think there are going to be fewer of them, but it's going to be more remakes. It's going to be more, you don't have to spend a ton of money on marketing. You have to know, people have to know what the IP is. So get ready for Ant-Man 33 because we're going to get it.
I think you're probably right about. I mean, we were already headed that direction to an extent anyway, and that was largely driven by just the ballooning of budgets, and not only production budgets but marketing budgets. I think a lot of people don't realize that typically the general rule of thumb, at least, is that the marketing budget is either the same as your production budget or fairly close. Like at least 50 to 75%. Which means that if you make a $200 million movie, and you're Marvel or you're Disney or you're something like that, you may very well be spending another $200 million or close to it on marketing that movie to people. But as a result, obviously, you got to make,
ton of money,
$700-800 million minimum to be able to not only recoup those expenses, but also make it profitable enough to do another one, to have money to reinvest into some other project and to, and to pay everybody, at a reasonable rate. And a lot of people work on movies. You think that these things are enormous budgets, but when you've got thousands of people working on it, and you've got, a lot of people in very high level positions who aren't even necessarily credited, but still have this infrastructure that they fuel. So yeah, how do you do that? Well, you do Ant-Man 3, right? Because everybody's heard of Ant-Man. You don't do the experimental movie that nobody's ever heard of before, right. Or you don't pull from the story that nobody's familiar with. That said, you can do it on smaller budgets, which means you can do it for HBO, or you can do it on Netflix, maybe. Mm-hmm.
I think the middle is going to be gone. It's going to be small budget and just astronomical.
Oh, absolutely.
I think that's true to an extent, although I'm not totally convinced, because I do think that streaming platforms offer a way to get to that middle.
I don't think streaming I still think there's going to be a time, like Netflix is not making money.
Well, yeah. So there's going to be a reckoning for Netflix for
sure. If they're not making money, and they're the biggest
the
one.
Thing, there may already be somewhat of a reckoning for Netflix.
So if they're the most popular, most subscribed to, and they can't even turn a profit without bringing in investor money, then
they've had several bombs lately.
Well, yeah. I mean, I think a lot of this too comes back to content. I mean, we were talking at the beginning about Mulan, and maybe this is a good place to sort of wrap up this episode, but like talking about Mulan and China and Disney not making a lot of money in China and not probably getting a lot of views, or really views may not be the right metric, right? The metric for Disney should be people actually paying
number
the
of rentals.
the $30
buys
for the premium access thing. Yeah. And maybe they're not, of course, again, it's a mystery. It's a black box, so we won't really know. But my guess is that they're not getting a lot of people to do that comparatively. They're certainly not getting that to the extent that they would have gotten if they were expecting families to shell out $30, $40, $50 to take the kids to the theater.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
It's just not the same. And I think that they should be concerned about that. But I think it comes down to content, maybe more than anything. And I think that a lot of these, where you see great content, or where I'm even excited about great content, again, Disney, not all bad. Mandalorian 2 trailer came out. Looks fantastic.
Yeah.
I'm super excited about it.
Me too.
We've been watching stuff on HBO Max, like Raised by Wolves, which is excellent. We just put out a Brave New World episode, and that I thought was pretty interesting. It's not my favorite show of this year, but it's good. We're going to talk on next week's episode, actually, about The Boys. And The Boys is also, I mean, again, there are issues with The Boys that make it really not suitable for all audiences.
Yeah.
But if you're interested in like a hard R show, it's a pretty good one to watch. So
Amazon Prime's got a couple of big fantasy series.
Yeah, Wheel of Time.
Wheel of Time
out.
and
Lord of the Rings.
Yeah, man. Oh, there's something else too that I'm thinking of. Gosh, I don't remember what it was. There's another one that's coming out too that's similar. But yeah, Lord of the Rings is a great example, I think, and I'm looking forward to that too. So I think there are some of those kinds of things that could save the day if they're well done.
Yeah, but like with Amazon, they're not using this to make money.
No. And you're right. Amazon has a different model. Amazon it's like a bonus feature on top of
they can afford to lose
thing.
Same with Apple. Like,
yeah,
I really don't know where the entertainment industry is going, but it doesn't look very good.
Well, we'll see.
Yeah, hopefully I'm wrong.
But
hopefully.
in the meantime, if you want to laugh, check out Bill and Ted.
Yes.
All right. We'll end this there. For those who are patrons of the show, stick around. We're going to be talking about another musical comedy.
The best.
Possibly the best musical comedy. We'll reveal that in the bonus section. In fact, I'm not even going to properly spoil this. I'm just going to say it's going to be good. For those who aren't patrons, please consider becoming a patron. It helps us do this show. It helps us make Out of Frame. It helps us just in that we're able to do more of this kind of content more of the time, which we really like doing. We hope you guys like as well. That's patreon.com/outofframeshow if you're interested. And honestly, if you're not a patron, we still love you. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.